40 minutes, right? Yeah, 40 minutes. You want me this time? I got it. Yeah, you can. Housekeeping. Good morning. My name is Kerri Keller. I'm a very grateful member of Al-Anon. Y'all having a good time? I think it's important to thank all the people that have taken the time to put this thing together, because it's a lot of work to do something like this. Thank you. Thank you. I've been on convention committees, albeit not nearly this big, and I know the personal growth that comes out of it, so thank you for yours. Thank you, Valley, and the committee for asking me to be of service and carry the message today to share my experience, strength, and hope with you. My God has a really good sense of humor. I'm the kind of Al-Anon that wanted to stay behind the curtains. And today I got to sit up here for two other speakers, you know. We're not going to be here that long because I don't think my bladder's that big. I drink a lot of water. I'm already crying. Thank you, Bob, for your share. Gabe, what a brave young man you are. Glad you're here. Wonderful speakers. Thank you for everyone I've heard this weekend. All the hugs. I hail to you currently from Phoenix, Arizona. We're my Phoenix people. You all are my people, but my home group is Thursday night, 6 o'clock in Phoenix. The Principles Above Personalities. We're a hybrid. If you ever want to go to a really good book study, look us up. You can join us online. We're happy to have you. And if you're going to be in Phoenix and want me to take you there, just give me a holler. The three people that were here last night for one day, are you guys here today? I don't mean to call you out, but I'd love to know if you were. We're just going to, I can't see anything, so I'm just going to figure that there's new people here. Takes me a second. But you know what? I've asked God to share through me today, so we're all going to go on a ride. I don't know what needs to be said today to touch someone's heart, but I will get to be of service in the telling of my story today. I was born in Sledge, Mississippi, 50 miles south of Memphis, Tennessee, on a 500-acre cotton and soybean farm. There was no active alcoholism in my home growing up. I know today that there was alcoholism in my home, but I didn't know it then. Until I was 13 years old, the closest telephone to our family was 3 miles away. We used to joke that we had sunshine pumps every 2 miles because we were so far back in the sticks. There was not much information coming in or going out of where I lived. I say this to you because in what I've learned, let me stop and do a disclaimer here. What I'm sharing today is not the opinion of Al-Anon. It's just my experience, strength, and hope, and some of my opinions. I can't keep them out as much as I would like to. You're going to get all of what I got today. What I've learned in my recovery is that in order for me to be truly recovered as much as I can, I've learned that I need to have the spectrum of emotion. When I got here to you 34 plus years ago, I had two feelings. I thought, okay and fine, neither of which are actually feelings. But I have learned here how to open my heart, and the whole spectrum of emotions I have to be able to try to at least entertain. Otherwise, it's like a faucet. It's either all on or all off. I can't say I don't want to have the emotions that I consider to be negative, because then I might not be able to have the ones that are positive, right? So what happened? My grandmother was the matriarch of our family. We had a family farm. My father was the baby. He had two older siblings, and they grew up and moved away, and there was a lot of sibling rivalry in my family, but I didn't know about it until I got to be older, because, you know, the way alcoholism, again, my opinion, the way alcoholism has affected our families, there's a lot of secrets. You guys have secrets in your alcoholic families? I think that's a common trait, isn't it? So my dad was the baby. He never grew up. He never cut the emotional umbilical cord for my grandmother. My grandmother weighed probably about 110 pounds soaking wet, but we called her Big Mama because she's run everything, man. We had a little country store. We lived 7 miles outside of Sledge, which that in itself was like a map dot. We had a school and a bank, you know, and a gas station. That was about it. But when I was 5 years old, I got my first mini bike. I got my first shotgun when I was 8. We were out on all this land. I got to rip and roar and learned how to chew tobacco when I was 6 years old. My dad, I was first born. I wasn't a boy, but my daddy wanted one, so he just raised me like one, you know, which was really fine until I got, you know, until I carried that a little bit too far, but we'll talk about that later. So I have a younger brother. He's 2 years younger than me, and we grew up on the farm. My dad married my mom. She was 16. He was in his early 20s, I guess, which was not uncommon for that time. And she was such a sweet young, and is a sweet Southern belle, if you will. And my grandmother was very dominating, very domineering. She had grown up through the Depression, and they had hard lives, right? And I mean, it was a use it up, wear it out, make it do or do without, right? And so she was some would say a miser, but some would say that she was smart with money. Well, she had ran a little country store, and people would come. There were people in our community that couldn't read and write at that time, right? And they would come and have her fill out her papers. And my grandmother was just, to me, she was like the strongest woman that I knew. It's interesting. For me, alcoholism has made me think very black and white terms. And I had my grandmother, who's on one hand very strong, and my mom, who I saw as very passive. Well, my dad, I told you, he didn't separate from his mom very well. So about 10 years into that marriage, I think one person, 3 people in a marriage is too many. So my mom left, right? And as I recall it, I don't have very many memories from that far back in my life, but I remember my father telling me that they were going to divorce and asking us who we wanted to live with. And that's a lot of pressure to put on a young kid to choose who they wanted to live with. And, you know, what I want to share with you today is how I've been affected by alcoholism is I have a disease of perception. I have a distorted perception. You can tell me that the sky is blue, but because of how I've been affected, by the time it lands in a certain switch in my head, I think you said it was purple, and I believe you, you know. And so some of this is some of the traumas, I believe, that happened when I was young. And I don't think that they did it to me. When I got here, I thought they all did it to me. Everybody's fault but mine. When I first got here, I was the biggest victim in the world. But I've learned through working the steps and healing that a lot of my perceived hurts were the way I perceived them, right? The way my brain worked. The problem was in my mind. Anyhow, my mother moved away. She didn't have much. My father had land. I learned later that my father had people purge themselves on the witness stand to say that she was not a good mother, and he got custody of us. And I was always terrified that when I would go visit my mom every other weekend, I was always terrified that there would be no home to go back to when I got back to my dad's. So I remember when they divorced, I remember waking up one morning and my mom had put 5 suits of clothes on hangers and hung them on the closet, and there was a little note that said, "I'm gone, love, Mom." And I thought she left because I was bad, because I was a little kid. I didn't know any different, right? And I can remember things come back to me in spurts, the ones that do. I can remember that for a minute it was okay that I was that upset, and then because my father didn't know how to handle his emotions or mine, he would begin to whip me and tell me to quit crying, and repeatedly, right? Because I was really upset. I said that there was no drinking in my household. My grandmother was raised by alcoholics, and I can remember sitting at her feet because she was a fabulous storyteller. And she would talk to me about how her stepdad would get drunk on a Saturday night, and they would literally take his wagon apart piece by piece and hang it by ropes in the tree, and they just thought that was the greatest prank ever, you know. I mean, and how he would call their ball games, and they would put him through the fence line to get him home on the way home because he'd be too drunk, and the later it got in the game, the worse he called it, and stuff like this, you know. So alcoholism is in my tree. It's there. My great uncle was a beer drinker. He just always was like buzz, you know. He was happy all the time. And my other great uncle was a binge drinker. Now, I didn't know these words to put to this before I got to you all. I didn't even know what alcoholism was until I got here and caught it, if you will, just this side of it. He would be sober for months, and then he'd be drunk for like 3 weeks, and my grandmother would go down and pour the liquor down and sober him up, and I just watched how she handled things, but I didn't have that much experience with it. When 12 years old, my dad remarried shortly after he divorced my mom, and I had a stepbrother who was a little bit older than me. And on the weekends, we would get the family car because, I mean, I learned how to drive when I was 5. A car and a mini bike, not just a mini bike, you know. I mean, we would go everywhere, and it was necessary on the farm to be able to move around. Well, on the weekends, as we got a little bit older, we could get the family car and go out, and we did what kids do. I mean, we got alcohol, we drank, and when I was 12 years old, one night I was seeing this little boy that my daddy didn't want me to see because he worked for us on the family farm, right? And I lost my virginity to him that night. Well, on the way home after that, here comes a distorted perception. My stepbrother raped me, and I thought that if I told on my stepbrother, I would get in trouble for what had happened earlier as opposed to what my stepbrother had done. So I kept it a secret because I couldn't discern, because I have a distorted perception, of what to do now. And that's the story of my life. So I kept it a secret. There are many secrets in alcoholic families today. And for the next 2 years, we lived under the same roof, and I would either go to sleep before my parents did so I could sleep, or I would lay awake till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, just paralyzed with fear that he would come into my room. And he didn't for some time. That didn't happen again. But what I have learned through my recovery, so much has been, it's interesting that word recover, go back and get, right? I've gone back through inventories and talking with my family and working with the steps of sponsors to see what things that happened in my life, how they affected me, and how I behave today as a result of those actions that happened and the reactions that happened. I became a big chameleon, After that happened with my stepbrother, I didn't want to be in the room with him, so I couldn't tell anybody what had happened. So I would just try to always position it where I was never alone with him. My stepmother, way before this, she was an adult child of an alcoholic. And I didn't know that either. But what I learned is that on his wedding day, my dad said, "You'll never come before my children." Well, it was like throwing down the gauntlet, because there was some little child in her that was looking for my dad's love, and she saw me as being in competition for that. So she began to be emotionally abusive to me, and shortly after that, it became to be physically abusive, and it was all in secret. And she told me if I ever let anybody know about it, it would be worse when he was gone again. And there was no reason for me to think that it wouldn't be. So I began to keep secrets, become a chameleon. I put on a face. Everything was fine. I never let you know that anything was wrong. One of the ways I think that God has shown up in my life is that, first of all, I got to be outdoors all the time. I would come home and I would get my chores up right away, because from a very early age, being at home was not a place that was somewhere I wanted to be. It wasn't safe in my home, and it was all in secret. So I had to pretend like everything was okay, even though I knew that if I was alone with her, it would be sometimes even violent. But I couldn't let anybody know. So I would get home and get my chores up and go down to grab my shotgun and my mini bike and go down to the river, and I would go squirrel hunting, and I would hunt down this little slough till I got to the lake. You know, when I look back today, my family went to church. We had to go to church twice on Sunday and Wednesday night, and had to do choir practice, and that was the church of my upbringing, the religion of my upbringing. And it was difficult for me to have a personal relationship with that higher power, because I thought something was different. I didn't get it, you know. And so I would go hunting, and I would hunt down to the lake, and I would be sitting on the riverbank up against the cedar knees of the trees, and I would look out, and the ducks would be coming in like this to land on the water, and the catfish would come up and they'd pop the top of the water, and the ripples would go out, and the sun would be setting, and I would feel peace. And when I finally got into program and my sponsor was helping me making me redefine my higher power, I realized that that had been God like wrapping itself all around me, just bundling me up in love, you know. That was about the only place I hunted a lot as a result, right? It was pretty good. You know, I was a golden child. I made good grades. I was good in sports. I think I learned early on to seek a lot of validation outside myself because of all the things that were happening at home and I couldn't talk about. I had all these secrets. It was like I lived a double life. And I was a great student and I was a great athlete and I got a lot of accolades. And that probably nurtured my soul enough to keep my psyche from just fracturing for some of the things that were happening. When I was 12 years old, my father also set me down and said, Kerri, there's 3 things that you can do that I will disown you for. Steal, love a black, or love a woman. Here's where I joke and say I wish I could have told him I stole my first girlfriend and she was black, but that didn't happen. My first sponsor was, God bless her, but that's not the same as a girlfriend. At any rate, I don't know why he told me that. Well, I kind of do. Stuff in his closet. I didn't even know about sexuality at that point, really what it was about. Anyhow, distorted perception. I wanted to get a softball scholarship to go to college because he told me he didn't have money to pay for me to go to college, that I had to get a scholarship. So I was looking for one, and long story short, I wasn't able to get one, but I had great teachers. Thank you for the educators that are among us. Truly. I had great teachers that helped save my life. My biology teacher helped me apply for a scholarship in between my 10th and 11th grade year, Governor of Mississippi did what he called a governor's school, and they took 200 of the smartest kids in the state, and they sent them to Mississippi University for Women for 3 weeks to do a project, and I happened to be in one of those 200. And so I already had been to that college, and she helped me apply for a Centennial Scholarship that was a 4-year, fully renewable scholarship, and I applied for it. I had to take my ACT 3 times to get my scores high enough, but I got a 4-year, fully renewable scholarship, and I was kind of bummed. Thank you. I was bummed because I didn't get a softball scholarship. I told you I had a distorted perception. I was like, oh man, God is good to me. So I went to college. I arrived down to the women's college, and I learned really quickly. I didn't put it together, but it occurred to me what my father had been saying he would disown me for. I found myself, and I found a relationship and began to be in a relationship with women. And the first relationship that I was with, I didn't even know about this until I did my first inventory. Looking back now, she drank and used a lot, but I didn't think that I was affected by that. But right out of the gate, I chose someone. I am here today because I love alcoholics. I failed to say that. Alcoholics are awesome, charismatic, wonderful people. And if you put me in, if there's a room this size, if there's one alcoholic, I'll find him in like 2 seconds. I promise you. I'm like a heat-seeking missile. I will find you. It's a good thing. I love alcoholics. Always have. Just been drawn to them like a moth to flame, man. I used to think that was a curse, but now I know it's a blessing because through that, I found the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and through that I found Al-Anon. Not a member, I found a sober member, and that's how I got through with her. I'll rush up here to say that I was basically in like the same relationship for 10 straight years with no time in between, just faces just kept getting different. And I didn't come to you with any tools, to the relationship of tools for communication or knowing how to be healthy. I learned when I was young that I was a reflection of my grandmother and my dad. My daddy. I was always taught to make daddy proud and make big mama proud, because you have to make your family proud because you're Southern and you're proud of that Southernness, you know. And so got through college and the relationships were crazy. And then spring semester, senior year of college, my stepmother, the one who had been pretty abusive to me, and my grandmother on my mom's side I had been very close to, they died within 2 weeks of each other. I had been ready to go to medical school, and at that point, that was like a God intervened in my life and did one of those tangents. I've had a few tangents in my life. And I didn't go to medical school, and I decided I would go to California with my current girlfriend. I'd never been west of Dallas, Texas, but I made the decision to move to California. We don't do anything extreme as Al-Anons, do we? The difference is I don't even have to drink to be crazy, okay? Alcoholics, they have, I mean, to a degree, they have an excuse, right? I want to even tell you, it was spun up. I mean, insane. I have been insane. Get to California, decide after I've been there a minute, well, first of all, when I get to California, the land of the fruits and the nuts, thank you for California, right? So in Mississippi, they would shoot you, you know. I mean, I had to live in the closet in Mississippi because it wasn't safe for me there. And I looked just like a little boy, so I had to be very careful. And when I got to Southern California, you know, being gay was okay. They had a parade, they had a newspaper, they had a gay town. Oh my God, I have arrived, you know. And guess what they have there? They have bars and gay bars. And you know what's in bars? Alcoholics. Oh my God! I'm like a kid in the candy store. I tell you what, I was so happy. I just stayed in the bars. And you know, I partied back then too. And long story short, in another series of relationships that didn't go right, and trying to find out some lies that one had told me, I wound up meeting this gal that was 2 years sober in A&A, AAA, I don't know, Alcoholics Anonymous, but she was sober. But they said she didn't drink. And in typical fashion, the first time I met her, I thought she was like all sullen and, you know, aloof. And then the next time I was around her, I fell head over heels in love, like I'd known to do. And I pretty much did that whole lesbian thing of bringing the U-Haul on my first date, right? And so it's a saying for a reason. Truly. So I started going to AA meetings with her because she had a problem. And, you know, I have the disease of being a good guy. That's how alcoholism affects me. I want to be the good guy because in and of myself, at that point in time, I didn't have enough self-worth or self-esteem to feel that I was okay just by myself. I thought I had to have someone on my arm. That's how I identified my worth. And so I became virtually addicted to her. I needed her. Thank God for her, because we went to a lot of Alcoholics Anonymous meetings, and I sat in those meetings and I listened to those steps, and I saw how people were being raised up from the dead, and Alcoholics Anonymous does that, and I have a debt of gratitude that I can never repay for that. And I thought that was fabulous for her. I didn't have a problem. Her sponsor suggested I go to Al-Anon, and a little bit in I did, and I sat, and I was in AA. And that time they smoked and drank coffee in meetings, like they still drink coffee, but they smoked, and it's like the bar without alcohol, right? And it was fabulous. It was a lot of fun. So I went to the Al-Anon meeting, and there was a circle of chairs with Kleenex boxes in the middle, and people crying and talking about their feelings. No. What I can tell you is that at the break, back then when I started 34 years ago, meetings were an hour and a half, and at the break I shot upstairs, and I'm like, I don't want to go there. She's like, it's okay, you don't need to. And so we rocked on. And in short fashion, we showed up. Each of us showed up. I didn't have tools for relationship. I didn't know how to say no. And she had a little issue with anger. We had a third roommate who also was 2 years sober at that time. And she had an issue. She had mental illness also. And, you know, when we showed up in that relationship, it began to get really dysfunctional. And I've always done, until I learned better, I do what I learned to do when I was young. And when I was young and my stepmother would just beat the daylights out of me, I learned to just roll up in a ball and wait for it to be over. Because if you don't resist, it passes quicker. And that's what I did in my relationship. And I never hit back. But I want you to know I didn't hit back physically. But emotionally, I threw punches that I knew that were going to get me attention. I was so sick that I would rather have her engage with me in violence or an argument. This wasn't conscious, but I look back now and I can see I'd rather have her engage with me in negative things like that because I was so afraid for her to not be with me. Had such a negative sense of who I was. So I come in on a Friday night sometime. I look down to see if my other roommate had cut herself too much, so we might have to call the paramedics because she tried to commit suicide. If not, I go to the back room. We have a knockdown drag out, but at 8 o'clock Friday night, we're sitting at the Burbank AA meeting at the hospital down there. That's our sober household. We laugh, but you know what? There might be people sitting here today that are in a sober household that have that kind of behavior. And what I can tell you is that you don't have to live that way if you choose not to. You are worthy of love. You are valuable. You are worth being in a loving and kind relationship, even if it means for a time that you wouldn't be in one until you waited for one. And I say that because I've learned that for myself, not because I want to tell you what you need to do. I haven't any idea what you need to do. I'm barely keeping my life between the ditches, okay? That's what I tell my sponsees too. I don't know what you need to do. Anyways, all right, getting programmed. Went back home. Lord have mercy. I sat in all these meetings with her. Was listening to all these steps, listening to people being rocketed into fourth dimension because their life was changing, and I thought, man, that's wonderful. And all the time in the back of my mind, that thing's happening about what my dad said. Every time I go home, I couldn't be authentic. So I went home 34 years ago, and I said to my stepmother, because I was not very brave at all, but on my way to the airport to leave, I said, well, I wonder what would happen if maybe Daddy found out I was gay. Well, by the time I got back home in L.A., he had left a voicemail on my answer machine. Y'all remember those answer machines? You do. He left like it felt like 5 minutes. It was probably about a minute, a message saying, I disown you. You're not in my family anymore. You're not my daughter. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Don't come see me. He said, I called the whole family together, and I told him, don't acknowledge you in my presence, and I don't want to hear about you. I was devastated. Couple that with the fact that I thought my partner was having an affair with our mutual best friend. I hit what I know to be my spiritual bottom today, because I found out a couple days later that was actually true. I was spiritually bankrupt. And I knew, because I had been around the rooms, that there would be help for me if I asked for it. And I asked for help, and I knew that I had to go and I needed outside help. And I asked for it. And that is my surrender to my higher power, to saying that I'm powerless and I can't do it anymore. And I went for 21 days to a treatment program, and after that 21 days, and during that 21 days, they pulled out all my emotional guts and they laid them out, and they made me put words to all the things that had happened to me when I was growing up that I had never been able to put words to previously. Rape, abuse, neglect, all these words. If I had put a word to it before without being able to be somewhere that I would fall apart, I probably would have just lost my mind, truly. So we did a lot of therapy. At the end of 21 days, they said, hold out your arms, baby girl. Here's your emotional guts. Now go find a 12-step program and learn how to deal with it. Thanks. Wow. Okay. They said to me, your entire belief system is founded upon lies. What do I do with that? If everything I know is founded on lies, where do I go from here? I was broken. I was busted. I was devastated. I was bankrupt. All I knew to do was go back to the rooms of Al-Anon. And I went back in the rooms of Al-Anon on May 17th, 1989, broken. And I took that brokenness to you. And family, you have helped put me back together. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I've said that. I took things from them. I steal things all the time. I plagiarized. I don't think they care. They said they don't care. They said the steps were not theirs. They said, go to 90 meetings in 90 days, get a sponsor, find someone who has what you want, get a sponsor. So I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. I took 2 days off. I turned around and I did another 90 in 90. I found someone who was in a relationship with a recovering alcoholic. That's what I wanted, someone who was in a relationship with a recovering alcoholic. I asked her to sponsor me. She said yes. Thank God she said yes. I'm telling you, that woman must have worn her own sponsor out sponsoring me. I was crazy. I mean crazy. Whipped up. I will just save you some time and say that we went through like busted windshields, broken eardrums, broken doors. I mean, it was crazy. It was insane. That's alcoholism in sobriety. Drinking is but a symptom, people. If we don't do the work that treats our spiritual malady, both the alcoholic and the Al-Anon. I have a spiritual malady too. I don't even need to drink. Well, I've told you, I don't need to drink to get crazy as I got, but I have a spiritual malady because of myself, I can't reach and have a connection with a God, a personal God of a higher power that I choose to call God. I can't do it by myself. I tried. But the last house on the block was Al-Anon. I came to you and you tell me, take these steps. She said she would sponsor me. She said, you got to call me every day. You got to go to 2 meetings a week. You got to take a service commitment. You got to show up. And I was so afraid. I did everything she asked me to do because there was nowhere else left for me to go. I love you. So I took a service commitment. Thank you. I took a service commitment. Relationships stayed crazy for a while, but I began to work the steps. I knew my life was unmanageable, and I knew for that moment when I wanted to go get help that I was powerless, but then my ego kicked in, and it took me a little bit longer to recognize that I really was powerless over the alcoholic. But it happened. Alcohol is a subtle foe. It will beat you into submission. Step 2 was the hardest one for me. I've shared with you that the higher power, the religion that I grew up in, pretty much I felt like I was going to burn in hell for eternity because of who I was. So when they said that God thing, I'm like, I'm out. I'm not doing that. But what I could tell you is that my sponsor said, are you willing to believe that I believe? And when I looked at her, I knew that she had something about her that I could not identify. I know today it's called serenity, but it was completely foreign to me, so I couldn't identify it. I just thought she was boring and like stayed over there, like closed her eyes a lot, right? So I said, this whole God thing. And she said, look, write down all the things you think about God. So I did. It was the God of my religion. And she said, okay, we got to fire that. You're going to have to identify a new one. And in the meantime, you can use my God. So many of you know every night I would go, dear Stephanie's God, thank you for this day. I did that for years. And I've allowed my people to do it too. People I've sponsored have used mine because you know what? All you need is to believe that it's possible. You don't have to know what it is. None of us know what it is. Right? We just have to know that it's bigger than us and we're not it. Lack of power was my dilemma. I had to find a power by which I could live. It had to be bigger than me. One is this problem. Step 1 tells me I am the problem. It is between my ears. It's not the alcoholic. It's how I've been affected by it and how I react to it. 2 through 12 is the solution. So I get with God in 2. 3, I turn my will and my life over after I have identified this. None of this was not so succinct. Trust me, it was nasty. It was just all over the place when I was trying to do it, right? And here's the thing. It's not going to look pretty, but it doesn't matter. The point is you just don't stop trying, right? We don't stop trying. Someone says to me, how come you Al-Anons have time? You slip and slide all the time. I said, we don't ever stop. We just don't stop trying. We don't leave and we don't stop. I'll keep celebrating my birthdays, right? It's more important to me than my biological birthday. At any rate, took the 3rd step, turned my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him. I took it that first time, and I take it every day. And many of you know me. You know that I believe with every cell of my being. I've turned my will and my life over to my higher power because God knows better than me what I need to do. And I trust Him to lead me, and my life doesn't belong to me anymore. It belongs to God. I have a life beyond my imagination. I'm not going to tell you it hadn't been crazy and wackadoodle and took some really weird tangents, and I just keep trusting God and showing up. Going to meetings, sponsoring people. I've done just about every service commitment there is to do. When I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, finally, I left out a little bit there, like 20 years. Hold on. Finally left that relationship that I was in. God did for me what I couldn't do for myself. He moved her about 50 miles away where I just couldn't physically do it anymore. I tried. And I began to see that I didn't know how to be in relationships. So my sponsor said, Kerri, you need to become the woman you want to spend the rest of your life with. Quit looking for her out there and become it. So I tried to do that, right? I did a 4-step, done multiple 4 steps. That first 4-step, I'm sure it was kind of cryptic and I didn't get everything, but we do the best we can. Get as many chunks as we can going through. Did a 5th step with my sponsor, and I would watch her after that, and she didn't go, run out of the room with her hair on fire or anything. Trust me, the things we've done are nothing compared to, what others have done. It's not a big deal. It's not all about me. That's new. 6 and 7, I began to identify the character defects and work on them. 8th step, work with my sponsor, get the list. 9th step, start making the amends as I work through it with my sponsor. 10, 11, and 12, maintenance steps, if you will. Keep doing the inventory. Seek God in all things. Try to carry the message. I was going to say a minute ago, I've done a lot of different service commitments. When I wound up moving to Phoenix, I learned to be better, right? I was looking to become the person I wanted to live the rest of my life with. Well, life has continued. Wound up living in Boulder, relationships getting better, getting healthier. Then moved to Phoenix, relationships getting better, getting healthier. Then, because my higher power has a sense of humor, at 49 years old, God decided to see fit to have me adopt a baby. If you know me, you know that sense of humor at 49 years old, God decided to see fit to have me adopt a baby. If you know me, you know that being a mother, the way I was raised, I didn't think that was possible because people like me, based on where I grew up, were considered, looked at as perverts. And it wasn't supposed to be my lot in life. And again, I turned my will and my life over to the care of God, and I'm the mother of a 9-year-old today. And the long-term relationship with with a member of Alcoholics Anonymous that I was in, we adopted her together. And then at some point in time after that, not 4 years into that, my daughter was 4 when I got it that I needed to leave that relationship because it wasn't in my highest good. And I can tell you that without a doubt, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done because my parents divorced when I was little. But I turned my will and my life over to the care of God. And someone said to me, Kerri, someone said it's better to come from a broken home than to live in a broken home. And what I can tell you, thank you, what I can tell you today is that we co-parent. We are we are showing up to co-parent a child, and I believe that both of us are working our programs enough that the thing that we are doing is making that child the most important. We let our stuff go to the side, right? And we're managing it. And for an Al-Anon like me, I always cut and ran. I would run away from you. When things got bad, I left. I just leave. If I couldn't leave physically, I'd leave emotionally. My whole life I've been a runner because that's the only way I knew how to stay safe. And I believe that when we ask God to grow, God is gracious. God gives us what we ask for. Be careful what you pray for, people. I can't leave. I am joined through a child with this other member of another 12-step program. And I'm showing up, trying to be kind, trying to work my program to show up. You know, we're taught in the program to try to be productive members of society. I learned as I was here for a while that meant not just in the rooms. That meant at my job I needed to be a good member of whatever I'm in. Whatever I'm a part of, I need to be a good member. I need to be tolerant and loving. Love and tolerance is our code, right? I need to show up and be, every day when I drop Ivy off at school, what are you going to do today, baby? Be kind. You know, but that's what it is. She knows. The most important thing we're going to do today is be kind. Look people in the eye. The thing I've learned is that the only place I can experience my higher power is in this present moment, right here, right now. I heard an AA speaker one time say, get between these, right? Be right here, right now. So if I'm in this moment with you, I can't be worrying about yesterday or tomorrow, but I can look for the light in your eyes. I can say hello to the people around me. I can talk to the people in the elevator. I can try to make a connection right here, right now, because that's the only place that the presence is known. People in our world today, people are dying for connection. People are starving for spiritual experience today. You guys know it. All you gotta do is turn on the news. I feel that part of the 12-step, having had a spiritual awakening, there's not enough time in the day for me to recount how many miracles have happened in my life. I didn't have time to tell you the second step story about my entire hospital bill getting paid. I had to sign a paper that said I was going to pay $316 a month for 18 months after I got out of the hospital. I didn't have that kind of money. I gave that alcoholic my Nordstrom card, and I had a bill I couldn't even think about paying, you know. I was sick. Three months into me trying to pay that bill, my sponsor told me, you know what, you just pray. You go to a meeting, you pray. God will show you. God doesn't speak in code. God will show you what you need to do. 3rd month in, I got a letter from the hospital. Miss Keller, your bill has been paid in full. Here's the last check that you sent to us. That's God. God works miracles, right? He does. He will move mountains. He moves mountains all the time. I wasn't supposed to be a mom. The marriage laws in Arizona changed, so I was able to legally marry my partner at the time and become her mom legally. That kind of stuff doesn't happen. That wasn't going to happen in my lifetime. I choose to believe that was because of a higher power. Anyway, back to the 12th step. Haven't had a spiritual awakening. I have absolutely had a spiritual awakening. I am awake today. I am awake today because I have worked the steps, and I've worked them repeatedly. And I have my heart's desire is to know the presence of God and to be an instrument for God. And for me, that means 12th step is where I get to carry that message. Apparently, that's where he feels I can be useful because this is where I'm at, right? We're supposed to carry the message to others and to practice these principles in all our affairs. That doesn't mean I get to go home and be nasty. It means in all my affairs. I can't tell you. I'm going to start wrapping up here. I'm sure there was so much that I would have thought to say that didn't, but it doesn't matter because I'm not the one that's leading this thing. What I can tell you is, when I got here, for those of you that don't know if you belong, I was afraid that if you found out who I was, that you wouldn't let me stay. My own daddy threw me away. Oh my God, my dad. Okay, thanks. My father and I had an estranged relationship for 30 years. At about 20 years into that estrangement, there were 2 years in a row when I went to go see him. And we sat at a Cracker Barrel and we talked because I knew he was getting older. And So after about 15 years, I started writing him cards and letters because here I am, like trying to be a good human being, and I'm sponsoring people and trying to be a good partner, blah, 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 all this stuff. And I thought, well, maybe I better think about what kind of daughter I'm being. Doesn't matter what kind of daddy he's being, what kind of daughter am I being. So I started writing cards, just like, it took me an hour to pick out a card for Father's Day because I wasn't going to be disingenuous, and it had to be like really, like, it couldn't be sappy. It just had to say, Happy Father's Day, love Dad, and have a picture of the Grand Canyon on the front. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to say all this stuff I don't mean. You taught me here. Mean what you say, right? Say what you mean what you say. And so I did that for a long time, and then he wrote me a letter back on my birthday one time, like 3-4 years into that. I was a puddle when I got this. I hadn't seen him in almost 20 years, and he sent me a birthday card. Dear Snooks, I love you, Dad. That's what he used to call me, Snooks. So sweet. And the recovered part of me was like, oh my God. And the non-recovered part of me was like, sure, I have a great way of showing that you love me. You know, I'll keep coming back. At any rate, I went to see him 2 years in succession. And that was about the time that Ivy was born, and we got married, and I put my marriage license on Facebook because it was a game changer in people's like me's lives. Someone showed him that. I was set to go see him again for a third time, and he called me and he said, don't ever bother to come seeing me again. And what I will tell you is it didn't hurt so much that time because I had lived through it before and I knew it would be okay. Because when I went to see him the first time after about 15 or 20 years, I sat before him and I didn't need his validation because you had taught me that I was okay and that you were my family and I didn't need his validation. I know I'm about out. I'm just going to wind up with this story right here. I knew my father was getting old, and so like last year in the summer, I was planning to go back to Mississippi for Thanksgiving. And I'd heard that his health wasn't good, and I sent him a letter, and I said, I'm going to be in Mississippi the week of Thanksgiving. I'd really love to come see you if you would allow me to. If you don't, and I wrote this, I absolutely understand, no worries, all good. I wouldn't know if I hadn't asked. And he called me back about a week or two later, and he said, I would love to come see me. I'd love for you to come see me anytime. And I love you. That's a miracle, right? And so I went to Mississippi over Thanksgiving. Literally, when I turned my phone off after we hit the tarmac, turned my phone on, his wife texted me and said he's in the hospital. I didn't know, nothing had been wrong that I understood. She said, he's in the hospital, let me know before you come. I went to southern Mississippi to see my father, and he was in a hospital room, and I sat with him that day, and we visited for like 3 or 4 hours. My cousin went with me, and my stepmom was there, and we had a great visit, and it was nice. She gave me these family picture albums, and she said, every one of your school pictures is in there except for your senior portrait, because that one is on your father's wall, and he likes to look at it, and I don't think I should take it down. And he's hard of hearing, and he over there, he goes, and that picture's going to stay there until I die. And you know what I thought? He's telling me in that statement how much he loves me. When I hugged my father, I kissed him on his little bald forehead. He didn't used to be bald. He had a whole head of hair, but he's bald now. It was. And I said, I love you, Daddy. And he said, I'm so sorry. It's been so long. I said, me too. He said, have you seen Mama? Big Mama. And I said, no, Daddy. My stepmom said, oh, he gets confused. And I thought, no, he's not confused. Mama's here. Mama's waiting. 9 days later, my daddy died. And because of you, because I had the strength and the courage to show up and do the steps and try to clean up my side of the street, I got to see my father before he died. And I feel like we had beautiful closure. And I owe that to Al-Anon. I know I'm over, so I just want to say that I believe I said everything God needs me to say, except this is my place and you are my people.